Welcome all to the Pro Football Radio podcast. This is your co-host, Jay Chima, coming at you live with the one and only pride and joy of Merrimack, New Hampshire, one Jakuma.
What is up, Jay? It's been a hot minute since we had recorded an episode of the podcast.
Dude, it's been a whole month since we've gone on here and laid some stuff down.
Yep, it's been a whole month, but Jesus Christ, it feels like the whole world's changed since the last time we recorded a podcast.
I tell you what, man, I am so ready for 2020 to be over with. Like, I feel like this is the longest, shortest year of my life, and it's only June.
Yep.
Because I look down at the calendar and I'm like, oh, it's June 6th or June 5th or whatever it is. It seems like it's so long, but it's also very short as well.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. And time and dates and times just seem to be blurring together, especially since we're still living under quarantine. But things are starting to open up here. But I mean, Jesus, like you said, it's only June, and who knows what the rest of 2020 is going to hold for us. And I mean, where do you even begin? I mean, we have a pandemic. We haven't even gotten out of that. We got social unrest throughout the entire country, and it's been a kind of worldwide phenomenon at this point. I mean, who knows? In theory, we can only go up from here, right?
You're right about that. We can only go up from here.
Like,
I think you put it the best, man. We could only go up from here, man. Well, put it this way. I think this year has been so bad. Like, we need like an extra reward. We need like 2 Thanksgivings or something, right?
Right. Like 2 Thanksgivings, 2 Christmases. It's like, oh, is your family divorced? No, we survived 2020. Like, I've been on social media the last month, and during the pandemic, I was like, okay, like this is our generation's version of the Spanish flu, like the Spanish flu pandemic of, I think it was 1919. And then like the stock market went down. I was like, okay, like it's 1919 meets the market crash, the Great Depression, 1929. And then you factor in the social unrest and police brutality going on at the hands of the Minneapolis Police Department murdering, Mr. Floyd. And now it's like, okay, it's 1919, 1929, and with the social unrest going on, it's like it's 1968. You have 3 cataclysmic events coming together in one, known as 2020. It's just, it's absolutely bonkers.
It's a lot to take in, and thanks for bringing that up, Puma, about the social unrest. And that's essentially what our podcast is going to be based around today. Episode 54 is going to be a little different, and this is not going to be about football. This is going to be about a larger conversation that I feel like we need to have, and it's a milestone in the podcast because this is the first time we're actually going to have guests on the podcast. We're going to bring in 2 of our best listeners, 2 of our biggest supporters, 2 of our biggest, guys that have been there from the beginning. The first one being Josh McNaught, aka Mr. Haitian Hudat, and then also Mr. Freddy Souliotis, which we call aka Mr. Vince McMahon, right?
Yes, sir.
2 of our biggest supporters, and we thought this is the perfect moment because the podcast today is not going to be about football. We're gonna get into topics related to football, but essentially there's going to be no X and O's talk today. It's going to be mostly about what's happening in the world, social unrest, with the killing of Mr. Floyd. With the murder of Mr. Floyd. It's caused quite a bit of national backlash about police brutality and just the way that society sees Black Americans in America and abroad. So today's not about football. Today's more about talking, listening, figuring out what we can do to help out. And I think it'd be the perfect time to bring on somebody in our community, the PFR community, to talk about the social unrest.
Yeah, and Jay, that was a great intro, and it was well said. And I think right now, as a whole, as a society, I mean, I think that's really the whole point, is to everyone just shut up and just listen. Like, everybody just has to listen to the other party and understand what's going on out there and how, we as a society can just try to improve life for everybody. It's a human rights issue at the end of the day. And, it's 2020. You think we've gotten beyond where we're at right now, and clearly we haven't.
Yeah, and we'll get into the details there soon, but just to elaborate some more on that, I thought about this quite a bit, and I think today's the perfect day to bring on people that are within our PFR community, and part of this movement and part of the Black Lives Matter movement is it's about talking, it's about having a dialogue, it's about learning, and And I think there's no better way than to do that by talking to your community. And even though our community is small and insignificant at the moment, the PFR community, I think Josh and Freddy are some of the best voices in that community, right? So it's a perfect time to bring those guys on and get their perspective. And in a few minutes, we'll probably touch base with those guys, bring them on, and we'll talk further in detail about how they feel about everything going on.
Yes, sir. It's going to be a great episode. Glad you guys are tuning in, and look forward to having a great discussion with these guys.
Wonderful. So with that being said, let's start. And when I bring those guys on, it's going to be mostly focused on them and their thoughts, and we'll ask them questions. We'll be the moderators. But before we get to that point, let's talk about just how we felt, just about what's going on. And I'll turn the floor over to you, Mr. Puma, and we'll get your thoughts while I collect mine, and we'll kind of run through how we see the world in the last 10 days or so.
It's just when you look at the video footage of what happened to Mr. Floyd in Minneapolis, it's probably one of the most horrifying 8-9 minutes of videotape I personally have ever seen in my lifetime.
Dude, I couldn't get through it. I mean, not to cut you off, and I'll just jump in here and there, but I couldn't get through the full 8 minutes. Like, I think about 3 minutes in, I was like, I can't watch this anymore. Absolutely not.
Right. And it's just insane. It's there's one cop in the main video that you see, right? Like there's one police officer, Mr. Chavin, I believe. He was the first police officer arrested for this act of murder. Alleged, of course. He's going to have his day in court, but the video footage clearly shows what he did. And then you see one other police officer, Mr. Tao, I believe. He was just complicit. Like everybody's out there saying he's Mr. Floyd saying he can't breathe. George Floyd himself is saying that he can't breathe. He's crying out for his mother who died 2 years before. And, even after he's non-responsive at like the 7-minute mark, this cop and the other police officers involved were still having their knees on him for another 7 minutes. And this is just, you see acts like this in foreign countries and you think it's the most totalitarian, regime issue, dictatorship kind of deal, things you see from secret police. And, this is in an American city. Like this is happening in our own backyard and things need to change. This really shouldn't have gotten to this point. This has been going on for decades and centuries. And, it's time for things to change around here, and there's really no excuse. And then there were scenes where it looked like a bombed out part of Baghdad or Beirut when they burned down the 3rd police precinct in Minneapolis. I believe it was on last Thursday, and it was just total unrest and anarchy at times, and peaceful protesters were trying to do their thing, and there were also Antifa people that were hijacking the protests to do heinous things. And it's just insane what is going on in society today.
Yeah, and I never thought we would get to this point in American society, man. And I'll be very clear. Obviously, I was not around back in the days when they lynched people, and I haven't seen it for myself. But this was the modern equivalent of lynching. Essentially, what you saw on that video, the pain that you felt through that video is essentially what I assume somebody that just saw lynching happen was probably going to feel. Do you understand what I'm trying to get there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, back in the day when the Klan was running around, and it was a public, display. Like they string up black men up in a tree at a public place and in the middle of a black neighborhood, and it was out there for everybody to see. But nowadays, everybody has a cell phone camera. Mm-hmm. So like there's no hiding behind a sheet or the badge or the shield or a blue uniform. Like if you're out there doing this stuff, the entire world is going to see who you are and what you did. And it's insane. It's insane that 2020 people still think it's okay to do this. Like they're ignorant to the fact that, technology is caught up and there's no way you can hide from it now. Yeah. Like it's beyond the dashboard cam.
Mm-hmm. And I think the video itself, it's one of those videos that's so jarring, that's so brutal, that's so evil. and so basically black and white, to use that phrase, into what happened. I know a lot of times white Americans will watch a video of a black person getting killed and they'll pick this apart and they'll pick that apart and say, well, what about this and what about that? But I don't think I've met one person or I've heard one person online or anywhere that said nothing but, oh my God, I can't believe that, or to the effect of, I can't believe that happened, or that is extreme brutality, or I haven't heard one opposite end of the spectrum from anybody, and that speaks to the power of that video and what it portrayed to all of us. I mean, essentially, it rocked not a nation, but it rocked the whole world. 140 cities had some sort of protest in the United States, and then beyond that, we're talking, London, France, Paris, Japan, New Zealand. My roommate's from New Zealand, and he's talking about how there's massive protests in Auckland. So that video itself started what I call obviously it's already out there, but the Black Lives Matter movement is essentially what the civil rights movement is, but in 2020. And I feel like I wasn't around for the civil rights movement in 1968, but I bet you this is exactly how it feels.
Right. And I was going to say, like, I think what's different this time, and, I'll say this again when we get our guests on, but before there was always, the killing was wrong, but like he shouldn't have done this. He shouldn't have acted this way. And I think the video, like you said, it's just so jarring and so overt and it's so in your face that it's clearly this is wrong. That it's bringing people that are white, that are the majority of the population, that other police departments now are finally coming out and saying that this is wrong. Those police officers don't represent all of us. We're out here. We're willing to listen to you and we're willing to help. There's a great video of this. I believe it was the sheriff I'm not familiar with the county name, but I know Flint, Michigan is one of the main cities in that county. And he straight up, he put his riot helmet down, he put his baton down, and he went to the crowd and said, listen, I want to listen to you and I want to help better this department. I want to make sure that we're treating you with respect. And at the end of his speech, he ended up marching with the protesters right down the main road in Flint, Michigan. And there are other police departments out there. The Atlanta police chief, she was also caught on video trying to talk to demonstrators in Atlanta and calm things down because they tried to break into the CNN building. And, there are more police officers in police departments today that are stepping in front and trying to lead this movement on their end of things against police brutality than in the past with like Philando Castillo and Eric Gardner and Alton Sterling and the list goes on and on and on. I think this is the first time that the thin blue line is really is tired of their other officers' bullshit.
Yeah. And I had a lot of time to reflect, man, about what I saw. And like I said earlier, man, I couldn't watch that full video in entirety. I watched the first few minutes and then I went back and I watched a few clips and a few clips there. And I just couldn't watch it. And I started thinking about what I saw and a lot of time to reflect and not to sound cliche or anything, but I really didn't understand what black people's plight in America is, just because I can't walk in their shoes. You know what I'm saying? Like I haven't lived in an urban area where racism is rampant and poverty is rampant because of systematic oppression. So I can't really walk in their shoes and understand what they're going through. But I can try. I mean, what this video has done for me now is made sure I open my mind, open my ears, open my heart, and try to figure out exactly what's going on in this country. And that's part of the initial beginning of a movement in my eyes.
Exactly. I mean, that's really the whole point. Like I said earlier, it's the whole point really that, Black Lives Matter has been trying to do is to bring to light systematic racism and to police brutality. And it's also to get the other side to just listen, to just listen to the plights that, that these folks have had for, let's be honest, 400 years. This isn't anything new. And I know I said this to a couple of people, but last week I was up in New Hampshire. I had to visit my folks. I had to pick some stuff up because they're getting ready to move. And I was watching the History Channel. They did a 3-part miniseries on, Ulysses S. Grant. He was the general that led the Union Army to victory during the Civil War and documented his life and documented everything all the way up to his presidency. And it's just incredible to see that was in the 1800s, and you look at, today, and the stuff that the Union fought for and Ulysses S. Grant fought for, like, has there really been any change? Has there been any progress? Maybe not. I don't think there's been enough. Like,
it's minimal. I mean, listen,
it's 2000.
minimal.
Like,
it's
the most.
millimeters.
Yeah.
I think somebody said this on not to cut you off. Somebody said this on Instagram. Maybe I think it was Ice Cube. He said we just went like 6 millimeters. We still got 1,000 miles more to go.
Yeah, it's insane. Like, if you juxtapose that to the growth of like a human fingernail, like that's the progress that has been made since the 1800s, when the Civil War was fought over slavery. Like, revisionists could say it was states' rights, but that's a bunch of bullshit. It was about slavery at the end of the day. And it's 2020, Jay, and they finally took down a statue of Robert E. Lee in the capital of Virginia, in Richmond. Like, is there any excuse for that? I don't understand. Like, the South lost. Like, the South lost the war, and we're finally starting to take down statues. You don't see statues of Nazis in Germany, right? You don't see statues of Tojo in Japan. It's insane to me how the South just keeps grabbing towards, like, the air quote, the lost cause. Get with the times.
Yeah, have you know that the Mississippi flag actually has a Confederate flag in it?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that until a couple of days ago. And you're spot on right, man. Listen, they lost the war, and it seems like they can't seem to let it go. It's gonna take a while. I mean, the country has been built on 300-400 years of racism, and it's not going to go away in an instant or a weekend or a month or even a year. It's going to take hundreds of years for people to recondition through generations what racism is, right? But I am proud of just some of the steps I've seen the last few days and some of the outpouring I've seen on social media. I mean, showing solidarity online is important. Yes, I'm sure it is. But the more important thing is we got to start taking actions after that as well. I mean, once the social media posts go away, you got to make sure you get out there and you let your voice be heard, and the protests continue. And furthermore, the protests need to ask for specific demands. Whoever the leaders are in the Black Lives Matter movement, they got to ask for specific demands, man. Demands such as, outlawing any tactic that restricts air and blood flow to your limbs, right? Essentially, cutting off any air or blood will cause you to die, right? So there needs to be a national ban on any tactic like that. There needs to be de-escalation training. That must be mandatory for all cops. There needs to be like a national database that's public of all officers' records, right? So there's got to be specific demands that need to be sent out there to our local leaders to make sure some change comes out of this.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? That's why I'm glad that, especially, Josh being a black man, I'm really excited to see, what are his thoughts? Like, what are his thoughts as a whole? And then what are his thoughts and how this relates to the NFL? And if anybody's going to be, like, I guess you could say, the authority on what, we could do. I mean, I'm, like you said earlier, like, I'm never going to experience life through Josh's shoes or other black people in this country. It's going to be great to hear what he thinks the majority of the population should do moving forward.
Of course. Speaking of Josh, looks like those guys are waiting on the line, so we will get them on here in a quick second.
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, and without any further ado, I would like to bring on two of our best listeners from the PFR community. We have Mr. Josh McNaught, aka Haitian Huda, the resident Saints fan, and Mr. Freddy Souliotis, also known as Mr. Vince McMahon's You're Fired.
Yes.
Welcome aboard, fellas. How are ya?
What's happening? It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, doing good. I'm excited to be on PFR airwaves.
Yes. Well, we're honored to have you guys. And Freddie, I promise I'll hit you with You're Fired at the end of the show still.
Sounds good.
Cool. All right, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm actually going to play the video of the Drew Brees call where he dropped his infamous disrespecting the flag comment. So I'm going to play that, and we're going to talk about essentially what the fallout from there was, and then Mr. Puma will read the apology, or one of them, that Drew Brees sent down. Then we'll open the floor for discussion. So here is Mr. Drew Brees' comments.
Protests from a few years ago, and obviously they were always about police brutality, and now it's coming back to the fore, and a lot of people expect that we will see players kneeling again if and when the NFL season starts. I'm curious how you think the NFL will and should respond to that, and of course you're such a leader in the league. What is your responsibility as a leader in times like this for the rest of your teammates and players in the league?
Well, I will never agree with anybody disrespecting the flag of the United States of America or our country. Let me just tell you what I see or what I feel when the national anthem is played and when I look at the flag of the United States. I envision my two grandfathers who fought for this country during World War II, one in the Army and one in the Marine Corps, both risking their lives to protect our country and to try to make our country and this world a better place. So every time I stand with my hand over my heart, looking at that flag and singing the national anthem, that's what I think about. And in many cases, it brings me to tears, thinking about all that has been sacrificed, not just those in the military, but for that matter, those throughout the civil rights movements of the 60s, and everyone and all that has been endured by so many people up until this point. And is everything right with our country right now? No, it's not. We still have a long way to go. But I think what you do by standing there and showing respect to the flag with your hand over your heart is it shows unity. It shows that we are all in this together. We can all do better. And that we are all part of the solution.
Everyone is looking.
And that is Drew Brees' comments, which universally, almost instantaneously, got so much heat and backlash from major prominent athletes such as LeBron and Michael Thomas, who's his own teammate, and Alvin Kamara. And the one that really got me was the Malcolm Jenkins one, because you could really feel quite the pain coming through that. And I'll turn it over to Puma, because there's been quite a bit of apologies coming from Drew Brees. But I want to hit on this specific one. Puma, you got that in front of you?
Yeah, I got it in front of me. Like you said, he did quite a bit of apologizing. He's one step away from showing up on the Today Show tomorrow. But here's his first apology on Instagram, and it's pretty long-winded, so just bear with me. From Drew Brees: I would like to apologize to my friends, teammates, the city of New Orleans, the black community, NFL community, and anyone I hurt with my comments yesterday. In speaking with some of you, it breaks my heart to know the pain I've caused. In an attempt to talk about respect, unity, and solidarity centered around the American flag and the national anthem, I made comments that were insensitive and completely missed the mark on the issues we are facing right now as a country. They lacked awareness and any type of compassion or empathy. Instead, those words have become divisive and hurtful and have misled people into believing that somehow I am an enemy. That could be not. This could not be further from the truth and is not an accurate reflection of my heart or my character. This is where I stand. I stand with the black community in the fight against systemic racial injustice and police brutality and support the creation of real policy change that will make a difference. I condemn the years of oppression that have taken place throughout our black communities and still exist today. I acknowledge that as Americans, including myself, have not done enough to fight for that equality or to truly understand the struggles and plight of the black community. I recognize that I am part of the solution and can be a leader for the black community in this movement. I will never know what it's like to be a black man or raise black children in America, but I will work every day to put myself in those shoes and fight for what is right. I have always been an ally, never an enemy. I'm sick about the way my comments were perceived yesterday, but I take full responsibility and accountability. I recognize that I should do less talking and more listening. And when the black community is talking about their pain, we all need to listen. For that, I'm very sorry, and I ask for your forgiveness. That's his first apology on Instagram, and that came out, I want to say, about 9 o'clock yesterday morning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And now I'm going to open it up to Josh because he is our resident Saints fan. Josh, I want to get your take on what you thought when you first heard his comments, and then everything else that came after it and his apology.
Well, look, I was pissed off like most, black folks. I won't say all, but most in the country when they heard those comments. And as far as the response that he got in pretty much the hammer coming down on him, he absolutely had it coming. So I definitely don't feel sorry for him in that regard. And his comments about the flag and the protest, and he pretty much said himself he missed the mark, and that's a nice way of putting it. I don't know what the if we're allowed to curse on here, but I had a few other words I could have used.
Go for it. Hey,
no,
listen,
let it flow, Josh.
I curse all the time, so let it loose, brother.
All right. No, as they say in the famous movie, you done fucked up, right? And I think he definitely found that out in a major way. So it's good that he kind of tried to take it back, or he not take it back. He tried to apologize and whatnot, but the cat was out of the bag. You said how you felt in your heart the first time you did it, and it's like someone who gets caught doing dumb shit. You're not apologizing because of what you did. You got you're apologizing because people found out what you did, and it made you look bad, and it made other people look bad. So you're apologizing for that, not the initial comments that he made. So yeah, I was mad just like everybody else, man. I told Brandon the other day, I had his jersey, for I forget how many years now, and that's not in my closet right now, man. I can't rock with that. That's stupid. So we're gonna have to see what his actions are gonna be. Actions speaking louder than words, as the saying goes. We're gonna have to see what his actions are gonna be that back up his sense of being contrite about his apology. But for the time being, he's gonna have to take the punches, metaphorically speaking, that come his way for what he said.
Yeah, I mean, that's well said, man, and we appreciate your insight. And I want to turn over to Freddy as well. Freddy, what was your thoughts when you first heard it as an avid NFL fan, and how did you perceive his backlash and his apology?
Yeah, so Josh, that was well said. When I heard that first statement about how he was, thinking of his grandparents serving, and when people think of the flag and they're patriotic, they tend to pull out the best parts of history, and they're viewing their perception essentially becomes their reality. So when he started making comments about that, and he didn't focus on the purpose of why they were kneeling and why they were protesting. He didn't validate any of that in his initial statement. And the first statement, I felt like those were his words. The second statement, I feel like he had a PR person next to him, and they might have typed it up and he read it off. But yeah, I feel like he's put his foot in his mouth instantly, almost, and I couldn't even keep up with all the apologies and what was the latest one, and what are his teammates saying about it. It's just a lot coming out today, a lot of information.
Right, and Freddie, I think you're spot on, and when people, like you said, like when people look at the flag, they proceed, it's their own perception. Their own perception becomes reality. Drew needs to get a little history lesson in this country. There are also black men that fought alongside his grandparents in World War II, and when they came back home, they weren't able to drink from the same water fountain. They can't go in the same restaurants. They weren't granted access to the GI Bill. They were going back to segregated parts of their hometowns. I think it's really tone deaf. And for a man that has been championed in the city of New Orleans, which I believe is 60% black, he's had 4 years to understand the history behind the movement and the history of how Colin Kaepernick came to, instead of sitting on the bench, to actually taking a knee on the field. If you're not willing to understand that, then that's just willful ignorance. The definition of that is to know the truth about something and still kind of ignore it and pew the reasoning behind it. And he's it's 2020, and it's hypersensitivity right now in this country, and he should know better.
Yeah, you're spot on right, Brandon, and thank you, Josh and Freddie, for your input. And I agree with all you guys. And I think I'm just really, really disappointed in Drew Brees because I thought he was better than that, right? I mean, I'm not a Saints fan, but I do look at Brees as one of the leaders of the NFL. He's one of the quarterbacks I love watching on a weekly basis. And I thought a man that won the Walter Payton Award, he would have more insight of what's going on. So I think he was unbelievably tone deaf into the climate that we're currently in. This is a completely different climate than 4 years ago. And maybe the more I thought about this and the more it started making sense when you start looking at the background of who Drew Brees is, right? So where he's from, and like he's from Texas with some fairly not wealthy parents, but they're upper middle class, and he's a staunch Republican. And I'm not saying he doesn't have the right to his opinion, which everybody does, but in the position he is in, a quarterback, the face of the franchise in a predominantly black city that they've championed, I think he must show more empathy. I think it's one of those things where he needs to be more proactive than being reactive into what's happening now. So we'll see how time will fare with that. But I wanted to ask Josh a question. Josh, you said you put that jersey back into the closet. How long will it take for you to put that jersey back on? I mean, is this something like a wait and see, or do you think when do you think that'll be when you put that jersey back on?
Well, like I said, I took it out straight up, took it off the hanger, and it's next, actually, as we speak, it's next to the trash. I haven't put it up in the trash yet, but I'm really getting close. I might just do it just because, to the degree that, one can come back from it's not even a slip up like this, but just kind of exposing your ignorance in such a way that is, as you suggested, someone of his, of his, not just accomplishment, someone of his prestige, I guess one would say, in the NFL, should know better. How long until I put it on again? Who knows, man? I might just rock with Alvin Kamara. I might rock with, Jenkins. Somebody else. There's a whole bunch of other players on that roster. And, Drew Brees, obviously, quarterback of choice, up until, this past week. Not saying I would say, I want to root for a different quarterback or a different team, just, individually on his, speaking just about him. Yeah, man, I'm not sure if I'm going to be wearing that jersey again. And it's a shame to say because, I'm sorry, I don't want to.
No, go keep going. I'm sorry. I was just gonna make a joke that you can just come on over to the Brady side with me and Freddie.
Oh no!
There we go. Here we go.
Now it's actually other people have asked me like, "Hey, Josh, are you gonna jump ship? What's your, I said, nah. I said I'm with the Saints, and I'm not gonna go back on the team. But as far as that individual, like I said, there's plenty of other individuals on that roster. I can get their jersey too. So. Whether or not I put it on again, who knows? I might toss it, just throw in the trash and say fuck it. You had all this time in one of the blackest cities in the country. Mm-hmm. Of all people who should know better, like your ass should know better, man. Like how you gonna say something that ignorant and then have to do all this big apology tour. Like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, come on, man. Like you should know better. I mean, he went to Vanderbilt. He's from Texas. Like you kind of went through the list there. So if anybody would know how those comments might be perceived, given the time that we've had since Kaepernick's original protest, if anybody would have known that those comments might not go over too well. If you put this out there, you're going to get a backlash and you might not come back from it. Of all people, he should have known that. But, they asked him a question, he was live and he exposed his ignorance, man. And, bringing up the facts, talking about the black soldiers that fought with his grandparents, man, he forgot that whole
right
of history and just kind of totally negated that.
Right.
Which, one of the things that, obviously not just pisses me off, but a whole bunch of other people who heard that. Like, how are you going to, A, skirt around the original issue, and B, kind of use patriotism and the flag as a way to, literally leave out a whole bunch of other people who were doing the exact same thing that your grandfathers were doing. And, you already went into the details about how they were treated when they came back. So, short answer is it's not in my closet, and we'll have to see if I put it on again. I might toss it. even if he does this, long-winded, live apology and explanation and extrapolates on what he was thinking when he was thinking it, his teammates may try to come around and, pick his brain, figure out what he was thinking, why he said that, and, try to have a healing process and sing Kumbaya and all that good shit. I don't know, man. I don't know. I mean, we'll have to see.
Well, we do know what he was thinking, right? I mean, it's very simple. He's somebody that believes you shouldn't be kneeling during the anthem, and back in 2016, he had the same exact stance, but he didn't apologize. But he did apologize now because of the extreme backlash, right? So,
right.
Jay,
Well, maybe not what he was thinking.
Not to cut you all off real quick, but just to piggyback on the 2016 bit. I mean, y'all can speak to this. Is it safe to assume that back in 2016, because it was political hot takey to bash the protests and the reason behind it, and to hijack it and say it's about the national anthem, it was kind of cool to speak out against the movement? But nowadays, people have actually grown to understand. Like, is that safe to assume?
Maybe, but it's gonna get hot again. I mean, we're in an election year, and come in November, what Trump is gonna be pushing. And for God's sake, Trump tweeted it out today. So whatever you believe is gonna have to have some core beliefs, and you can't be swayed by this movement left and right. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's gonna come around again in 3 months, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And Freddie, let me ask you a quick question. How do you perceive Drew Brees now? And do you think everything that's happening, do you think that'll cause some sort of fracture in the New Orleans locker room? Do you think this could lead to some actual bad play on the field?
I mean, no doubt it's going to cause some friction in the locker room, and maybe guys aren't going to treat Drew Brees the same way anymore after he said this. Well, most definitely. Maybe some of his teammates are going to forgive him, some aren't. I guess we'll have to wait and see how it plays out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was just another thing too. Back in 2016, he said basically the same comment, no backlash, and then I believe it was in 2018, Donald Trump did the famous, call the players sons of bitches, and if I was an owner, I would look down and say these players were fired. I believe the following day, he took a knee along with other players during the national anthem. So I think Drew Brees is a bit hypocritical at this point of, you took a knee back then because the president called you guys sons of bitches, but you still have this willful ignorance. And like another thing that's been grinding my gears, and everyone out there has been saying, and I've had a couple of conversations this week with people asking, what's so bad? He expressed his opinion. He has the right to an opinion. Yes, Drew Brees has the right to his own opinion. And the rest of his statement, it was kind of beautiful to have how he described his feeling during the national anthem. But the issue is his first sentence with, "I'll never agree with anyone disrespecting the flag of the United States of America." And, the flag itself isn't patriotism. And Benjamin Albright brought this up on his show 2 days ago on KOA Denver, where he said patriotism isn't the flag. It's not. The flag is a badge kind of deal. It's all about what did you do to better your country today? What did you do to help your brothers and sisters out to make this a better place? It's not about whether or not you listen to the national anthem or you view the flag as this. In the words of Albright, he said the song is it's a song written by a dude. Like, that does not define patriotism in this country. And I think, Brees needs to understand that it's beyond just a symbol. It's, what actions do you do? And to the people, again, that said he has his entitlement to an opinion, freedom of speech does not mean you have freedom from consequence. Like, Colin Kaepernick had an opinion, and he used his free speech, and his consequence was he's out of a job. So, Freddie, I'm going to ask you this question. We were kind of bouncing it back and forth, and I'll open it up to the rest of you guys. If this was a lesser quarterback, like, say, a Jake Cutler level, or if this was Ryan Fitzpatrick or, Mitchell Trubisky, if one of these guys said what Drew Brees said, would we be talking about that quarterback possibly being out of a job?
I mean, yeah, you'd have to have those kind of conversations. I know that rookie quarterback, Buffalo. His name's escaping my mind right
Jake
now.
Fromm.
Oh, Fromm. Yeah.
Jake Fromm. That question is gonna play out with Jake Fromm being a rookie. An unproven rookie coming out of Georgia. He's got a lot of apologizing and getting into the good graces of his team again. It's not going to be easy, and especially as a rookie. So, Drew Brees is a superstar quarterback, and if a lesser quarterback had said it, I don't know. I think he might be out of the league, or because once you lose the locker room, the quarterback's a leader. So
For sure.
Yep.
What do you think, Josh? If there's anyone else, you think there's a new quarterback under center? You think Mike Florio gets his wish and has Taysom Hill be the franchise quarterback?
Oh God, stop with the Taysom Hill love.
Hey, I don't love
Taysom
Taysom Hill as much as Florio does, but Josh, what do you think? Would Brees be out of a job at Hall of Fame caliber?
I think that he would still, because the NFL, has made so many poor decisions in its past, excusing, the inexcusable, cough, cough, Ray Lewis, cough, cough, Stallworth, I think it was the receiver who, killed somebody inadvertently or manslaughter, whatever the case
did
was.
30 days in jail.
Yeah. So, the NFL has a history of looking the other way when it comes to, like I said, excusing the inexcusable. So, would a lesser quarterback be out of a job? I don't think so. Unfortunately, I think that they would, get the same, public scrutiny, get dragged, so to speak, as the kids say in the street, they're gonna drag your ass, they'd still get dragged. And deservingly so, just like Drew Brees deserves, and that young kid who's talking about, only elite whites should be able to have these high-powered weapons and whatnot. Fuck out of here. Anyway, I think that just because like I said, the history of the league and allowing such crazy nonsense to be allowed, and making excuses over and over again. I mean, it kind of goes in what's the term? I can't remember the slang term, but yeah, I think they would they'd still be in the league. They'd probably get demoted. They'd have to do the public apology tour, and a couple of weeks later, maybe a couple of months later, they'd either be on a different team or they would just be in a lower position. But they would definitely, I don't think they'd be out of a job. And Brennan, what was the first part of that question you said? Whether I don't know if it was about whether or not they'd have a job, but what was the first part?
I was just wondering if it was a quarterback of lesser stature that said the same comments that Drew Brees did. If he would be out of a job.
Yeah. No, I mean, they would get. They might lose their out of a job, maybe on an individual roster on a team, but I don't think they'd be kicked out of the league.
All right.
But even if they were a lesser caliber player, I think it would still get the same public scrutiny, just like the rookie and anyone else who wants to, say some ignorant stuff right now regarding that. They'd still get the whole nationwide, excoriation that, no matter who it was, no matter what roster they're on, if they opened their mouth and said something stupid like Brees did or what the other kid did, they'd still get it. They'd still get the hands. And they might, who knows, somebody might end up catching hands over this because, hey, as far as splitting a locker room, as far as I'm concerned.
What's that kid's name? Geno Smith, right? Got cracked in the jaw for $300. Got cracked.
Yeah. I mean, and to the question you asked before, whether or not it's going to split a locker room. I mean, think about this. Remember when the Red Sox and they won the World Series, and then half the team wanted to go to the White House, the other half said no. We don't represent what this president stands for, and the other half of the team said, we have to stay together and go to the White House, and that split a locker room. So if that split the Boston Red Sox World Championship locker room, then you bet your ass that there's going to be some, that they already are, some players on the Saints roster who feel some type of way, i.e. Malcolm Jenkins and i.e. Alvin Kamara, and probably that offensive line that has to protect him. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I think it's definitely going to be a split in the locker room. Sean Payton, he's going to have to. I don't know what he's going to do, but he's going to have to do something to, make sure somebody doesn't put hands on him. And as far as how the team's going to react. I remember that scene in what's that movie? Any Given Sunday, when the offensive line pretty much had enough of the quarterback's bullshit, and they, for several plays in a row for a whole drive or however long it was, they just stood up, didn't block the defensive line, stood up at the height snap of the ball, and they, let the opposing defense absolutely tee off on their quarterback, and they had to get the message across to him, like, hey, hey, you're not bigger than the team. But, to the bigger point, we're not taking your shit.
Right.
As a whole team, not just the offensive line, but I mean, we saw, Thomas, making his, taking his indirect shots at Drew Brees. He's got a whole offense to have to worry about now. And, also a whole defense to worry about now because they're in the same locker room. So there's definitely going to be, it's probably going to be a few tense moments at the very least, and like I said, that O-line, if they decide they don't want to, block for a few drives or, put hands on, I'm not saying they should, but I'm just saying it would be justified because it's like, man, you understand what you said because you didn't apologize for it the first time and you're only apologizing for it now because, like I said, because your ass got caught. If it wasn't like, the consensus wasn't the same, if we weren't in such a moment like we are right now, it probably would not have gone the same way. But because it was 4 years later, and because Colin Kaepernick has essentially been proven right, and people are feeling the type of way that somebody like Brees went out and said that dumb shit.
Yeah.
What do you think, Jay? If it's anyone else, any other quarterback, lesser stature, you think the Saints have a new quarterback under center?
Listen, I have a hard time with this question, and because of what happened with Jake Fromm, right? I think what Jake Fromm said was straight up black and white racist. His text said, only white elites, who he is, he's an elite white person because he plays quarterback in the NFL, should be allowed to carry guns or whatever he said. Essentially, he's saying because of my color, because of my status, I should be the only person allowed to carry a suppressor. And I see the Drew Brees thing as a completely different story, man. Like, yes, it was ignorant. Yes, I'm disappointed. Yes, I know it's misguided. But at the end of the day, I don't believe it's worthy of calling him a racist or some of the folks down in the New Orleans area were calling him part of the KKK, which I almost fell off my fucking chair when I heard that. I don't think he's racist. I mean, maybe I don't know the guy. Listen, he could be a full-on racist when he goes home. But at the end of the day, I think from everything we've seen, the actions that Drew Brees has put out into the world, whether it's helping rebuild the city after Katrina, putting up $5 million for coronavirus, which in the city of New Orleans is 60% predominantly black. In total, to this date, his foundation and the money that he's raised is up to $33 million to help rebuild or to help fight coronavirus. So I don't think the guy fully deserves to be pushed out of the league. It's a mistake. I get it. And it's going to take a long time for us to heal, especially the players that he plays with, because some of those remarks, those players such as Malcolm Jenkins said, especially Malcolm Jenkins, man, that one cut to the core because you can feel the pain in his voice.
The grandfather that served, if I recall the statement correctly, right?
Exactly, right? Exactly. I just don't think pushing him out of the league or making sure he doesn't play quarterback in the NFL ever again is the right way. I think this is something that Drew Brees is going to have to work on for the next few years, maybe more than after his career has ended. But I just don't see him as losing his job. Am I misguided in thinking that way? I don't know, but I just don't think he should be pushed out of the league.
Right. I'm not saying push him out of the league now, but if it was a quarterback of lesser stature that said the same comments that he did, would it be fair to assume?
The Bills could have released Jake Fromm today. The Bills could have released him and they sent out a statement saying we're working with him, and this little like puff piece saying he's going to be in a team for the foreseeable future. I mean, maybe he not make it to training camp, but he wasn't cut immediately, was he?
Right. No, fair enough. I just think I'm kind of with Freddy in the thought, and this is what I said yesterday too, that if it was, this was pre-Jake Fromm, of course, but like if a quarterback of a lesser stature, like my Ryan Fitzpatrick, I think if anyone else said this, I think that team might be looking for a new quarterback under center. It's crazy times.
And fellas, did you guys get to hear the Roger Goodell video that dropped about 10 minutes before we jump on the podcast? Did you guys hear that?
I did not.
All right, let me play it for you real quick. Well, let me find it, and you guys can talk amongst yourself for a quick second while I find it. But I want to get your reaction on that as well before we head out.
Yeah.
Actually, I got it right here. Hold on a second. All right.
Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and all the families who have endured police brutality. We, the National Football League, condemn racism and the systematic oppression of Black people. We, the National Football League, admit we were wrong for not listening to NFL players earlier and encourage all to speak out and peacefully protest. We, the National Football League, believe Black lives matter. I personally protest with you and want to be part of the much-needed change in this country. Without Black players, there would be no National Football League. And the protests around the country are emblematic of the centuries of silence, inequality, and oppression of Black players, coaches, fans, and staff. We are listening. I am listening. And I will be reaching out to players who have raised their voices and others on how we can improve and go forward for a better and more united NFL family.
And that was Commissioner Roger Goodell responding back to the video the players put out last night. Some very high-profile players such as Patrick Mahomes and Saquon and Michael Thomas and Odell, essentially asking the NFL to take a stand. And the NFL came back. Roger Goodell had one of his better shining moments in that statement, in my eyes, coming back with a strong rebuttal. And he answered the biggest question I had was, are you going to let your players protest and take a knee? And he said it in that video flat out. They have no issues with players protesting peacefully. What's your guys' thoughts on that video? If you could hear the audio come through.
Yeah, I mean, I could hear it, and what he said was, they pretty much they admitted they made a mistake by pushing players to be silent on this. Of course, it's coming a little late where. Every state is protesting now, but I think, it's a good thing to finally say it. Yeah, that's just my thoughts. I mean, being white and talking about race in general, it is uncomfortable, right? But I think that's kind of one of the first steps you need to do to try to empathize, because you'll like Alvin Kamara said, you'll never, I'll never know what it's like to be a Black man and face those kind of, tribulations and things that they go through. So, but I think it's a good step in the right direction to acknowledge it and talk about it.
What do you think, Josh?
Man, that was what's the name of the gentleman who was on the other line? I forgot.
Freddy.
What? Freddie?
Goodell?
Yep.
No, Freddie. Yeah, I agree with that. With a lot of what you just said, man. So I think it's good that you and a whole bunch of other people around the country are have the same sentiment of understanding that uncomfortable conversations are, as uncomfortable as they are, they are necessary. So I definitely start by saying that. As far as Goodell, I'm not sure if he wrote that himself or somebody else wrote that for him, but I was
he's got like 20 million people writing that for him. He's got a massive
yeah.
But I'll say this too, though. I'll say this though too, is what Goodell said today was more legit than the statement that was put out 5 days ago.
Of course, yes.
I'll say that much. Like, I think that was more legit than the word salad that the PR department up in Madison Avenue put out for the league. But Josh, didn't mean to cut you off, but can continue.
No, that's cool. I hear you. No, I think that is definitely the strongest public statement that the NFL has made to date. Going back to Kaepernick and even before any incident that happened before Kaepernick's protest, where NFL players were feeling a type of way about what was going on in the NFL, either stayed silent or had some BS comment. So yeah, years of having to listen and watch this shit happen, and it's taken this to have the NFL make a bold stance publicly like this. I think because of the climate and how serious things have gotten and how much it's escalated and how much, the whole world at this point is realizing that, black folks are A, not taking this shit anymore, and B, to the extent that the NFL has finally got it in their damn heads that not only is the, population of their league majority black, but a lot of those players, I would guess, some of them were probably contemplating, either sitting out or taking a position publicly or otherwise that would make the NFL look really, really bad if they didn't come out with a statement like this. So I think that the players and essentially the Americans at large, given all the protests that have been going on, the momentum of the moment essentially forced the NFL's hand to actually put this out there in a way that was more substantial than anything they've said yet. So I'm glad he said it publicly. He went on the record, so now people can say, hey, you said this, you were on the record. You said this. You can't take it back now. So I'm glad they went on the record and said that. They recognized the pain that the players and their families and even the other employees of the NFL have been feeling. I'm glad he kind of put that in there, and it was, like I said, the boldest position yet. I think the moment forced the hand to do it. Whether or not they would have came out with such a bold statement if it wasn't such a high tension, I don't think so. I think they would have probably gone a little bit softer had the moment not been this monumental, so to speak. As far as him acknowledging the right for people to protest in the league, I think that's definitely a long time coming, and it was a matter of time really before they were going to do it anyway, given the trajectory that we're on right now. I don't think that he or any team owner or any coach not only would be in a position to morally, but would just physically or any other way be able to keep a whole bunch of black players from kneeling and protesting this coming season. Like there's no way that they were going to keep that from happening. And I think any attempt that they would have made to try to, hush the issue or, put a damper on the issue this coming season, it would have just made the NFL look so bad, worse than it looked before at any other point in their attempts to, make this moment a little bit less, severe on their end as far as their pocketbooks, as far as their image goes. They were in no position to have players not protest if they didn't want to. They know they couldn't stop it at this point.
Right.
I was disappointed that he didn't mention Kaepernick by name. It's like, motherfucker, like, we know who you're talking about. Like, just say the name, Colin Kaepernick. He was right. And, we should have known. We should have listened to him, Colin Kaepernick. But the fact that he skirted around that, he thought he was slick. But, I caught him. I think a whole lot of other people who were listening caught that too.
Well, the messed up thing is probably, he probably didn't mention his name because he didn't want to open himself up to another, collusion case, right? As messed up as that sounds, though, right? Like if you're one of the lawyers for the NFL, if you come out in a video statement, and you apologize for Kaepernick, that's probably open grounds for another collusion lawsuit. And
his lawyers probably told him that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just crazy where you look at, it's June 5th of 2020. Wasn't it like last year or the year before, the league was thinking of passing rules to penalize players or teams for protesting? Like that's
Jerry Jones talking about, no players on my no
Stephen
one on
Ross.
Team.
Stephen Ross, Miami Dolphins owner, big Trump contributor. He had a plan, and that got the kibosh put in it real quick once that came to light. Now, I'm going to ask another question, and I'll lead off with you, Freddie. So it's probably a fair assumption that there is a chance that the NFL may come back the first couple of weeks without fans, or maybe a less amount of fans in the stands. If there's a less amount to zero fans, do you think they'll even broadcast the national anthem or have that part of the opening ceremony of every football game if there's no fans in attendance?
I mean, I think if they don't, then it's, they're the media and people are gonna say, hey, why aren't you showing this? Are you trying to hide, more players kneeling for police brutality? So I think they're gonna have to.
Right. What about you, Josh?
I think it's a toss-up, really. I mean, like I said, the NFL has a history of, making stupid decisions in the time that they can't afford to make stupid decisions. So, I agree. I think they will. I think they'll, in a way, kind of have to get to the point, like you said, people are going to start asking questions if you don't do that. But I wouldn't go all in and say 100%. There's a good chance that they will, but I won't go all in and say 100% because, the NFL has been known to not make the best decisions in the past. It's a toss up. It's tough because they're gonna say, oh, if we show the national anthem, people are gonna get mad. They're gonna start calling us. They're gonna start hounding us. So I can't believe you're not showing the national anthem. That's part of the game, and they're having the flags and the soldiers and the troops coming out with the flag, and whichever famous recording artist singing the national anthem. I can't believe you're not gonna do that. And then the other side, as we know, if you do that, you're going to see the players protesting, and then the other half are going to be like, I can't believe you're doing this. Why did you air it? Now it's going to just be more people protesting, and, we don't want to see that. We want to see the game. So, they're not going to – they have to understand it, as I'm sure they do by now, if they didn't 4 years ago, that they're not going to make everybody happy. So
Right.
I think that they will air it. But who knows? The NFL, they could just do something else.
What do you think, Jay? You think they'll air it if there's no fans in attendance?
Yeah, they absolutely have to, man. If they don't air it, they're gonna piss off both sides of the party, right? The side that says you must stand and respect the flag, and then the side that says we have the right to kneel during the anthem. And if you take that out completely, then I think both sides are going to be pissed off and both sides are going to be rioting. Protesting. But yeah, there's absolutely no way that they can't show the national anthem with especially the amount of heat the issue's getting right now, because that's the easy way out. That's copping out. That's taking the bitch way out, right?
Mm-hmm. For sure. No, I'm in agreement. I think with that statement, I think they kind of drew the line in the sand, and they have to air it. If it's one person in the stands, or if there's 50,000 people in the Superdome, they're going to have to air the national anthem. And we're already. I said this on Twitter before we hopped on. I think the NFL and the president they are heading for a collision course come kickoff time. Trump came out and said that people should stand with their hand over their heart, like Drew Brees described, and said Drew Brees is one of his favorite quarterbacks. And, maybe 40 minutes later, that's when Roger Goodell showed up again in his man cave. He did not look as exhausted as draft night. So it's good to see that it's good to see that Raj is rested. He looked coherent. He didn't look like he wanted a cigar and a scotch. So it was, he came out and he said that statement right after Trump just couldn't keep his thumbs to himself.
Dude, I tell you what, this issue is just going to get gaslighted again. I mean, the second that the election gets closer in November, and the fact that the NFL is going to start playing in early September, Trump is going to gaslight this to galvanize his base, man. The way I see it, and maybe I could be wrong. I'm not a political science major here, but I mean, he's got to have lost all the Black, Latino, and minority votes. So all he has left is his base, and he's gonna have to cater to that base, and he's gonna have to galvanize them. And this is the perfect hot button issue topic that's gonna galvanize his base.
Yeah, for sure. And my favorite, ever since George Floyd was murdered by the Minneapolis Police Department, over the last couple of days, I've had discussions with family members and friends about, they brought up the fact of the protests again. Like 4 years later, they're still bringing up, well, I don't agree with when they're protesting. And finally, I just said to one of my friends, the point of a protest is to make people uncomfortable. And in order to do something that's going to generate change, you have to do it at a time that's going to make people uncomfortable. Whether or not it's Kaepernick taking a knee during the national anthem, whether or not it's John Carlos and my apologies, I'm forgetting the silver medalist, Tommy Smith at the Mexico games when they did the Black Power salute on the medal stand. There's going to be times that if you're going to make a political statement, you have to do it when people are uncomfortable. Or Owens at the 1936 Berlin Olympics, a black man winning the gold medal in Berlin at the height of Adolf Hitler trying to promote this Aryan race. This has been the case throughout human history, and in order for change to occur, you have to make people uncomfortable and they have to talk about it. So, people are in their feelings about this again because it's inconveniencing them, and I think that's just a crock of bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're spot on, Puma. I mean, protesting in itself is not, it's fine. I mean, that's just who we are. That's what this country is built on. The people that bring up protesting when you talk about race relations are the people that are trying to deflect the argument or not have that hard conversation about race relations in this country, because I don't know if it's just too painful for them or if they're just racist or whatever it is. People that bring up the protesting aspect of things, it's just a tactic that deflects off the actual issue at hand.
For sure.
Cool. All right. Well, I think we had a really good conversation, fellas. Do you guys have anything else you want to say before we wrap it up?
No, I mean, for me, I just commend all of you guys for talking about it. I know I was pushing Puma for a new PFR episode. Haven't had one for a while. Start for content.
True.
And you do it and ask me, and I'm glad I could voice at least my opinions also.
Yeah. And listen, we expect to have both you, Josh, and Freddy on quite a bit this season. I mean, now with that we're doing it over Skype and we're not in the same, the amphitheater as we call it. We can do it over Skype and we can have you guys on. We can talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. So expect more of this.
Sounds good.
Hey, before we wrap, fellas, Jay, I'm pulling at you. I'm pulling at Liz Taylor, and I'm getting the last word this time.
Nice. Go for it.
Josh.
Yeah.
As a black man, this is unrelated to football. This is just, I guess we could do a quick, what is the pill that we can do as a society? What would you suggest that white people can do to help facilitate change? What do you think? Because I know, we've talked off air and you've went to a couple of protests in Manchester and you were kicking the tires and going down to Boston. What do you think we can do?
Well, there's a lot. I mean, that's a that's a pretty deep question, my man. I think one thing that people can do is I think one of the biggest things that has held the country back not just was, but is, ignorance, right? Ignorance itself, ignorance of, the country's history, of, the individuals that make up this country. I think just ignorance in general. We have to destroy ignorance, really. That's one of the first things that people can do. Read books, talk to people, have these uncomfortable conversations that are finally happening after, how many decades, centuries really has people, have people been avoiding these topics of conversation on a grand scale, right? I think destroying ignorance and having to confront the history of the country for what it is and not sugarcoat it. I think it's too easy for a lot of people to, skirt the issue like Drew Brees was. And he's not the only person, but a lot of people who would skirt the issue of, quote unquote race relations and, what is race? It's, some people, it's classification of people. And some people say, it's a construct because, there's one human race, but there's, several, there's many, ethnicities, right? And having that conversation of having to, differentiate the two of those. And then, like I said, just from a pure historical aspect of what the country was, is, and has become, I think that's something that people really need to delve into and not be afraid to have those uncomfortable conversations, because, one of the many reasons we're at this moment is because collectively the nation hasn't done that. I think the NFL is the situation that they're dealing with now is a microcosm of the nation, really. This collision course that you were speaking of I couldn't have said it any better. I think that's what the moment is right now. We're literally on a collision course. It's gonna end one or two ways, man. We're either gonna destroy ignorance. We're gonna start handing out justice. We're gonna start treating people the way we're supposed to. Everybody, no matter where you're from. We have to start admitting the ugly past and see it for what it is. There's a lot of things that people should do, but destroying ignorance and demanding not just justice, but as much as people might not want to hear it, we have to start handing out punishment to these people who are doing us wrong. You know what I mean? Players standing up or not standing up, taking a knee, was like, hey, the same message that Kaepernick said years ago, that has come full circle. Educating, Americans educating themselves who don't know, and those who do know what's going on, having those conversations and engaging people in them to try to, end that ignorance, and for people who have power to use their power to prosecute people who break the law and murder people of color.
Wow.
Well said,
Nice.
Josh.
Wow. Yeah.
Well said.
Wow, man, that's great, man. Listen, thank you guys so much for being on. I mean, I think thank you both, Freddie and Josh. I mean, at the end of the day, the only way there's going to be change is if we have these hard discussions and these hard conversations with our communities. And I think it's our duty. I mean, obviously we have a very small podcast. It's not that many listeners, but I think it's our duty to make sure we talk to our community and have these discussions. And I can't think of two better people to have this discussion with than Freddie and Josh, some of our best supporters. So we thank you for that, guys.
Let's see. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, before you guys sign off, Freddy, I'm a man of my word. I'm a man of my word. Freddy Souliotis, you're fired.
Oh, I love it.
Nice. You got the live version, Freddie. You got the live version.
Nice.
We love you guys. Yeah. Thank you so
Freddie,
much.
you want to plug it up real quick and we'll jump off?
What's up?
You want to plug it up real quick and then we'll just all jump off?
Yeah. So this episode, the special edition of the PFR podcast, can be found on Spotify, SoundCloud, Google Play, and Stitcher under Pro Football Radio Podcast. You can follow us on social media at PFR Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, Pro Football Radio Podcast. I'm on Twitter at Brando_Puma. Jay Chima is at Jay Chima. Fellas, you want to plug up your own handles? Josh, where can we find you on the IG?
Josh Haitian Who Dat.
Josh Haitian Who Dat. Freddie, where can the good people find you?
IG Hercules 2424. That's me.
Yes, sir. And you find us on there. Like, subscribe, download, share with your friends, share with your grandparents, share with everybody. This is a great episode and a great chat, and I'm honored. I'm speaking on behalf of everybody here, Jay and I. We're honored to have you guys on here. So
silky smooth, man. That plugging it up gets smoother every week, man.
No, but are you gonna get the last word? Is Liz Taylor gonna come back?
No, it's all you, man. I'm done. If you say the last words, and we're done.
All right, that's a wrap. Via con Dios.